So I want to thank everyone for coming today. I'm very excited about our presenters today, and this is the last meeting for the year. It's hard to believe we're at this point. And I was talking to Dr. Costello earlier. I'm like, well, can we do it in person? Because I really like to see everybody, because we haven't had an opportunity to fellowship and get together and meet. But it was already set up for virtual, and it just really worked better this time since it had been set up. So we decided to keep it, but I'm really hoping next year we can see each other in person, and we can start to just network a little bit more intimately, so that way we can get to know each other a little bit more as we work through the challenges. I know this today already. I've had to bring up the drug task force and bring them on my campus, and we've had a couple instances in the first half hour of school. So I'm sure I'm not the only one. It's been fun, especially as we try to head into the last quarter of the year. How's everyone else doing? Are you having as much fun as I am? Because this is a dream.
I'm doing well, thank you. Looking for an ink pen quickly.
Well, Dr. Costello did say that we do have that sign-in link from Miss Adams, so please take a minute. I want you guys to get credit. I know we're all super busy right now. So I do want to make sure that you get credit for taking time away from your school, especially with everything going on. So make sure you do click in the chat box and click that link to get credit. And right now, Dr. Costello, do you have anything to kick us off with this morning?
No, I just appreciate you all being here. You guys have definitely got a challenging job every single day, but you've got a great opportunity to connect with so many kids who need a connection. And but for some of them, that's the reason they're with you, is because they've just not found that connection with an adult. And what a great opportunity you all have to impact the lives of kids. I know there's moments that are just amazing, and there's moments that are challenging, and you face those every single day. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for the hard work that you put in, and you serve a lot of value to our districts that you're in. So thank you all for coming and taking time to get together, share ideas, and hopefully get something you can walk away with that'll help make you better at your job.
Dan,
Yes.
this is Denise.
Hey, Denise.
You're a tech guy, right?
I'm a what?
A tech guy, IT guy.
Little, I can figure it out sometime.
Well, if you can hang around, I don't know if you're planning on hanging around until we get my PowerPoint going and I know how to access it from here. I've emailed it to Robert, but I'm a little nervous about making sure that I can access it. And
Yeah, I think I just got an email from Robert, and so I've got it here. I mean, I don't know that I'm a host, so I don't think I could share it, but
okay.
I think I can.
You should be able to share it also.
So I'm going to, I'm still learning this too. So I'm going to, if I share my screen, and I think I can bring it up. I'm going to try it right now. Can everyone see it?
Yes, there it is.
Will that work? And Denise, if you can just let me know how to click. And I
Okay.
can push a button. I have been trained. I think I'm certified there.
You can do
So,
that much, huh?
I can do that much. I really can. And
you and I have a lot in common, Robert.
I know.
But
So I've got that up, Denise. So if we want to go head into
okay.
that. But again, I'm real quick. I see a lot of us have popped on, and I just want to thank Greg for hosting this and having this opportunity to share out and this platform. And again, hopefully next year we can get together and actually meet face to face and build our network a little bit more. So thank you guys. And before Denise gets started, is there any stories out there? Because I love humor. It keeps us going. It keeps my mind where it needs to be. Any fun things happening out there with you guys you want to share out?
Yeah, I'll share one thing that happened right like the day before spring break for us. I had mentioned earlier in the year that we were working on a bill with DJ Johnson out of Owensboro to increase access to the GED for targeted students throughout the state in alternative run programs. It's not designated A5, A6. It just says district alternative run programs in the law. I'm not 100% sure on the effective date, but the governor signed the law in the 31st or the 1st. It allows 17-year-olds at any district or any Kentucky alternative program run by district to take GED, and if they pass it, they can stay enrolled. They don't have to unenroll. The only waiver you have to put in is an age waiver through KDE, kind of the way the KEXEC schools have been doing it already. But Commissioner Glass asked that we add a floor amendment so that compulsory attendance is no longer part of. It used to be that the law required you still have compulsory attendance even though you got your GED. So now once they earn their GED, compulsory attendance is off, and students are able to move on, military, workforce, additional school, whatever they need to. So what'll happen there, and the reason I bring this up, especially today, is your district will make your district's policy. It's not going to have a policy. It's not going to be written by the Kentucky Board of Education. It's going to be written by your local Board of Education. And you'll have to lay out kind of what the guidelines are for somebody to qualify within your district. So as a leader of your alternative school, you need to be thinking about what trends do you see in your local county that this might be the right fit for a select number of students that are of the age of 17 and potentially have zero chance to graduate within their 4 years, or sometimes even in their third year. If they're an 18-year-old that's older and they've got 4 credits, I mean, we can keep trying to push toward 22 credits, but realistically, what kind of motivation is there? So that's just going to be something that you and your local district will have to figure out. But that law was signed. The bill was signed into law, and I'm thinking it'll probably be July, but more details are supposed to come out. Suggesting from KSBA and from the KDE suggesting possible guardrails to put on, but they are suggestions only. You can set it up however your district wants to set it up.
That is amazing. Jeremy, what is that bill number?
It was House Bill 194. You can kind of follow it. There's some language in there that helps KEXEC have a little more flexibility with who they partner with. Right, they were tied to universities. This kind of gives them the same freedom as the Center for Safe Schools and School Safety, where they can partner with potential nonprofits as well. So good thing for them. We had to add that in kind of last second because Eastern kicked them off campus for next year. They're wanting to get out of the that business side of things. So KEXEC will be moving next year somewhere. Not sure where that is yet, but they're in negotiations. But that was kind of part of the bill as well, is to kind of give them the freedom to partner with others.
Well, I tell you what, it's long overdue. I know all of us that have been working with these students who, like you said, have 4 credits and they're 18 years old, even 17 years old. We know that they're not going to be able to do it, especially with the life situations that they're working through. So this is a great bill. I'm really excited about it.
I am too. And like I said, like I know it maybe impact 3-4 kids a year in your school, but it can make a huge difference for those 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Side note on that, it'll make sure you understand the implications for your SAR. It will help with dropout. It will not help with cohort graduation rate. That's my next battle. As of right now, it's defined through ESSA as high school diploma only, but I'm going to work with that. One of our local representatives here is on the staff of our local congressman Guthrie, and hopefully we can start working through that office and see about getting just word changing, so that we can kind of ease that as well. But that'll be a longer process probably.
Jeremy, I'll just speak for Central Kentucky. I really appreciate that. Sorry it didn't happen when I was still in an active principal, but it's going to muted. It's going to make a huge difference for a handful of kids in every district. When you multiply that times the districts by 10 years, we've made a
Yeah.
substantial difference in a decade in the lives of some kids.
That's what I'm hoping, and
Yeah.
really in the lives of our state when you think about it.
Exactly.
You know, when you start talking about the cost of a dropout,
Exactly.
versus somebody that can work, I'm very excited
Yeah.
for this opportunity for sure.
Yeah, well, those things you can't measure. When a young person gets their GED and what that does to their employability, but also just what it does to them as human beings, and going forward as they raise their children, we know their children are more likely to do well in school. So, you know, it's impossible to measure the difference that it's going to make, but we all know it's going to make a huge difference.
Yes, ma'am. It's exciting. It's exciting. It was
Very exciting.
It was interesting. The process, learning how the sausage is made, you know, taking this from concept to an actual bill, finding a sponsor, getting the language, working with KESA lobbyists, and folks up there to think about what wording would work that would be okay for everybody. Maybe, you know, standing up a little bit to some non-education folks that wanted to add stuff into the law. Had to do that a little bit too.
Yeah.
But it worked. And at the end, it ended up working out. It passed out of the Senate Education Committee with consent. So it was a smooth process once we got to that point, thankfully.
Yeah. Robert, that'd be a good presentation for next year. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it would be,
Yeah.
especially once we get some guidance from KSBA.
Right.
I agree. I also wanted to share out, I know a lot of us are struggling with mental health and getting qualified people to come in and work with our students. I'm starting to see, at least in this county, little agencies are opening
So
up.
you meant the kids, not us, right?
Pardon? What's that?
So you said the kids, not us, right?
No, well, I tell you what,
Hey,
part of what I look at my staff, and I know you guys do the same thing, and I am very concerned with their mental health as well.
you ain't
Yeah.
kidding.
You know, they have got their own issues at home they're dealing with, and a lot of people have lost loved ones this year, and
Yeah.
then they're working through this, and I have had the principals across this county say that they have never had the behaviors to the level that they've had since masks have come off in their building. So they're really
Yes.
working. They have got a lot of anxiety and depression, especially with the females students. We're having more gender identity situations with our students struggling with that. And we have a lot more of the manifestations of physical aggression with our students as well. So we're trying as hard as we can to support everybody. Our Title IV population also has never been higher than it has right now. We've got probably twice the number of students who have violated the Title IV policy, which is our drug and alcohol policy, than we've ever
Yeah.
had. So all of those things are stacking. And as they stack, our staff we're not doubling or tripling our staff. We still have the same number of staff. So we're really, I'm concerned about the welfare of my staff, very
Absolutely.
much so.
If I can piggyback on that conversation quickly. Last week, I think I've mentioned before that I'm on the school board in Jessamine County. Last week, I had a school counselor, because being a school counselor was a part of my past, who wanted to meet with me for coffee, very frustrated about school behaviors and just things. She's an experienced counselor, and she said this was was by far the most difficult year she's ever experienced. And in talking that through with her, we came to the conclusion that her seventh grade, she was particularly concerned about a lot of seventh graders who seemed to be suicidal, anxiety through the roof, other kids just being unusually mean, even for seventh graders. And we know that seventh graders can have that tendency to engage their mouth before their brain's even awake.
Me too.
And we came to the conclusion that she was dealing with seventh graders who,
We'll be back over third, I think.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
I didn't hear that. Do I need to do something?
No, you're good to go.
Okay,
Denise. Go ahead.
okay. We came to the conclusion, and I felt like this conclusion kind of really summed up for her. And sometimes just by being able to name something and condense it is helpful. And we came to the conclusion that her seventh grade, the seventh graders at West Middle School, are seventh graders chronologically, physically, but in terms of school socialization, they were still fifth graders. And that's a lethal combination. They haven't been socialized. Last year, West Middle, they went to school some in person, but it was always on an aid. The school was split in half. So to have the entire school together this year, really for the first time since fifth grade, and a lot of these kids didn't attend fifth grade together, but just that whole idea, the school socialization that kids lost through COVID, it has really mattered. And teachers, I'm really concerned about teachers. I'm concerned that for young teachers who fear this might be status quo, that we could lose a lot of good teachers out of the profession. So I think it's important as school leaders to help our teachers, particularly our younger ones, understand how unusual this is. And, hopefully life is going to return to some sort of a normal again.
And I
Anyhow,
do
for whatever.
hope- Yeah. I hope that too, Denise, because I mean, right now with everything, I think we are on the bubble. On the other end of the middle school, the high schoolers were having to be the adults at home with the kids and the learning, with the remote learning and the NTI. So that's where we're seeing at the high school level a lot of their frustration, because they're actually having to come back into school after being the adult in the home for 2 years.
Yeah.
So on the other end, that's what we're dealing with the high school students too. So I think you nailed it. You said exactly what my other principals have said, that these middle school students, their socialization have regressed, and they haven't been able to have that normal progression and maturity with interacting with their peers. So I think that synergizes with both ends coming together, and is causing challenges not only for the students but for the staff working with them.
Right.
Very important. So, which right now, Denise, I think this is a perfect segue into what is the best way that we can equip our school for success, and that by far is making sure we have the right people in the right seats on the right bus.
Right. Robert, can you get to where you're doing the actual slideshow?
I am right here. Can you see? Is the slideshow still pulled up?
It's pulled up, but all of the slides are showing. Can we go to the slideshow tab and
Yes,
do?
I can do that. Hold on.
Okay.
Let's go here, and we're going to present now. Okay, is it just that now, or no?
No, I'm still seeing the entire PowerPoint.
Okay.
And I don't know what to call that screen that I'm seeing, but it's got all the slides down on the left.
Okay.
Usually I go to slideshow, and on the top I go to slideshow.
Okay. And usually that works. However, I have two screens. So what it's doing is
God.
throwing on my
Okay.
other screen. So let me see if I can't move this over here.
Yeah, there we go.
Can you see it now?
Yes, sir. Well, we had it.
All right, I'm going to try it one more time. There.
Yep, there it is. There
All
it
right.
is.
Okay.
Before I actually delve into this, I want to invite everybody to chime in as we go through this. This is obviously pretty much my opinion, and that doesn't necessarily make it right. So if you've got disagreements or additions at any point through this conversation, feel free to chime in and be as honest as you need or want to be. In my opinion, the most important thing I did when I worked at the Providence School was to hire good people. And you're going to have to hit a click there, Robert. Yeah, hiring quality teachers and support staff. As you know, if you get the right people on your team, then it means you have fewer of those really hard conversations, the one that keep you awake for several nights in a row when you know you're going to have to confront a teacher, and you're thinking about how you're going to approach that and how you're going to handle it and get an outcome that is one that's best for your school and best certainly for students. So initially, I began to realize how critically important it was to put time and effort into hiring and doing that well every summer. Okay. Next screen. As time went on for me, I realized that I had a lot of thinking to do to clarify the process that I went through, both the thinking process that I went through before I hired and the actual steps I took. And I realized at a retreat that I took my administrators on it, that we really needed to kind of name the qualities in teachers that mattered most to us. And that seemed to have the greatest impact on our kids. Was it a content specialist? Someone who connects readily with students? Was it somebody that was really gifted in managing behaviors? And what we decided on that retreat was that there were a lot of things as an alternative school that we could train people to do, and how to teach and how to manage behaviors. What we could not train into people were dispositions. And it was almost like we needed to look for a certain type of person, a person who could confront openly and honestly, but kindly, a person who could, who wanted to be a team player. Let's face it, in alternative schools, you've got to have people who want to be a part of a team together. Bigger high school, you can have people who want to operate as the lone wolf a little more easily, or they just want to circulate in their small group. But in alternative school, it's the better the staff can come together and function as a team, as a whole, I think the better for students. So we began looking for certain dispositions, and that's a little harder to find in the interview process. Next screen. So I realized at some point that one of the most important tasks I had as a school principal was determining who to interview, because whatever 3 or 4 people I put before the interview committee, I really wanted them all 3 or 4 to be really quality candidates, and we were picking from the best of the best. And so I put a lot of energy into selecting that group of people. And some of the things I did were looking at resumes, and I'm sure you all probably get a lot of electronic resumes. I actually went to central office and sat for days sometimes scouring paper resumes, looking for indications of mission drive was one of my highest priorities. And in order to do that, I looked, what do they do with their free time? What do they volunteer with? Are they working at the homeless shelter on weekends? Are they engaged in this area? We've got a young kid, Jarrett's Joy Cart. Do they work on Jarrett's Joy Cart? Do they, what do they enjoy doing with their free time, and how are they spending it? we also, I began switching my process around a little bit my last 8 or 9 years. When I first started, I would call references right before I offered the job to somebody. And I decided that instead I needed to call references. It took more time, but I began calling references to decide who I was going to interview. And what that did was I felt like it gave me better candidates to interview. And honestly, what happened is I was ready to offer the job to somebody. And when I called their reference, I found out that there was one of those situations that that was highly confidential. It had to do with some theft of some school property at their former job. And I realized I had spent a lot of time in my interview committee's time interviewing people. And if I had done that reference check before I interviewed the person, I would have never interviewed them. So I kind of had to start the process all over again. So I called references and had my assistant principals help me. We called as many references as we could. Sometimes we would call candidates and say, give us 3 more references. Because we just felt like the more we could check this person out before we put them in front of the interview committee, the more we could be happy basically with just about any of the ones that we interviewed. That was the hope.
And Denise, Denise and I had talked about this. You know, in our situation, it's a little different because we get very few applicants. And I don't know about you guys, but when you have very few applicants, what we did is, you know, we didn't have the luxury of having multiple people. So we actually did a screen review, our paper review screening of their application. And then based on that, then we brought them in because sometimes we only had 2 or 3 people to apply. That's all we had.
Yeah.
So in those situations when we're struggling to find candidates because of the market right now, because there's, you know, people are like, well, I can go to a regular high school and I got my pick of positions, or the alternative school. A lot of times they're like, well, I'd rather go to a regular traditional school because they know that the behaviors often associated with the alternative setting is sometimes hard to work through.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, we would bring them in and then I would call the references, paying particularly, I was more focused on their supervisors, their past supervisors than their references. For our instances, because I wanted to know what their work ethic was. I wanted to know what their past supervisor thought about their performance. And that's how, when we don't have very many candidates, how we were to handle it, so we could at least get someone in the classroom.
Yeah. I think it's a very different environment today than it was when I retired in 2014. And I don't envy the position you all are in trying to find people, quality people to work in your schools.
Does anyone have anything else to add as far as what they're finding when they're posting positions?
I just want to add, Dr. King, that well, of course, I was a high school math teacher. I was hired here in Adair County in '98. I think there were 6 people that interviewed with the council that same day. They had interviews lined up, and we're right now lucky to have 1 application.
Yeah.
And a warm body. A lot of these emergency certificates, option 6 people. I mean, I never thought I would see the day when this would happen.
Right.
And you know, it's definitely, I agree with everything she says about you got to hire the right people. Very important. And as far as references, you got to be really careful because they're going to list 2 or 3 people that, you know, are going to talk them up.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do your homework on that. I do like the idea of calling supervisors. For the most part, they'll be pretty honest, I think, with you. But as far as I'm just really concerned. I'm really concerned with the whole deal because there are good teachers and there's some not so good teachers.
Amen.
And that's just the way it is. And you got to hire these good people, but I'm not sure they're out there. And so I don't know what that means. I'm going to retire in June. This is 30 years for me, and I just didn't think I would ever see it come to this. We just have to. I think when you're hiring these people that are not terrific, you've got to have basically curriculum coaches or coaches of teachers to constantly try to improve some of the less than desirable skills they're offering in the classroom and to help them by modeling and that kind of thing. I try to get out to as many classrooms as I can. And I don't know. And then with the, of course, again, I know we're talking about the alternative setting, which I do work with Adair Youth Detention Center, our teachers out there as well. But, with them taking the ACT away from our basic public schools, that deflated me. I was always an ACT guy, always prepared, I always come in on Saturday mornings and work with my kids. And we did a lot that just took the air out of my bubble. And I know it's a deal where these college institutions are fighting for the dollar. They're just basically not turning anybody away now, but really, really concerning. And, you gotta have that good instruction going on, that quality instruction. And I really worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
And along that lines, KSA is creating a task force with a bunch of different K groups and some other folks, KDE. If you're a KSA member and want to be part of a task force that helps kind of work on that specific problem, as far as getting, retaining, recruiting, figuring out new ways to kind of build the profession back up, because we are slipping quickly into that point where we're just hopeful. I mean, when I applied to Davis County, every elementary position that came open here had 100 applicants. Well, that's not the case anymore at all. And that's just 5-10 years. I mean,
Right.
and with the battles we've had and the attacks on public ed and then perception and all, you add all that in, you really, the number of kids coming out of colleges in their ed programs are very small. So it's gonna take some innovative things, especially in the short and long term.
I agree. And it really
Yeah.
makes what you guys do as far as leadership in the building so vital to
Right.
establish the culture that people want to not only get there, but then stay when they get there in light of the challenges that they face every day. It's just critical, which is, even more important that GREC continues to have the supports and resources that they offer to try to help us. And we get the ability to talk to each other and kind of work through and share ideas, whether it's PBIS or cultural events or hiring practices like Miss Adams is sharing, just to try to figure this out, because we've got the Ford plant opening up here. We've got people making a lot more money at a factory than they could starting out as a teacher, and we don't have a defined benefit anymore to entice them that separates us. So it's getting more and more difficult to attract qualified candidates. So once we attract them, we definitely need to do our best to support them and keep them.
I think
Do you
it
all
also,
care? Sorry.
go ahead.
I was going to say, if you care about jumping and just share something that I've done recently. Anthony James, American Schools, College Street campus. Sorry, I missed the last meeting. It was crazy around here and it just got busy. But will be going on my 3rd year here at College Street. I don't know, 11th, 12th year as an administrator. I was an elementary principal for multiple years in this district as well. And one of the ways that I quote unquote, I guess, recruited for this building is that when someone has reached out to me or one of my staff members and they have interest in maybe a new opportunity, I've invited them out to my school, take a personal day, let your principal know that you're going to take a day to go look at something, and have them come out and spend the day with us and just see the interactions and how we treat kids. I'm up front with them. So listen, they can get sideways in a hurry here. I said, that's why we have the kids we have. I said, but I want you to see the interaction in this building. I want you to see how we love kids. I want you to see how kids interact with us. And really has used that as a motivating tool. This past year, the 3 people I hired all came and did that. 3 out of the 4, let me say that I hired came and did that, and they fell in love with the school, and they're doing a phenomenal job right now. And to go back to your words there, as you were presenting earlier, it is 100% personality versus whatever their content is. I don't care what their content is. I want to know their personality and their love for kids. And can they do the intangibles? Not the things I can teach them, but can they do the intangibles?
Right.
And are they superstars? Because that's really what I'm looking for. And it's my 3rd year here, and I've let people go every year, and I'm open and honest in the front end. I say, listen, this is what I'm looking for. This is your opportunity. If you want to be here, this is what we got. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't mean I won't bring you back. I said, but if there's a better candidate, I'm going to go with the better candidate. And that's just the open, honest communication I have with the people that come into this building. And it's been really cool to kind of see it grow. Like I said, it can get sideways in a hurry. You all know that. You all live it every day. But it's been so rewarding, and it's been so awesome. And I'm going to say something. This guy has no idea who I am, I don't think. But Coach Shelley came to Adair County when I was probably a junior or a senior many moons ago. Good to see you, sir. Glad you're doing well. Probably have no clue who I am. Anthony James, old farmer kid from Adair County, doing well. So good to see you, man.
He's muted.
You gotta unmute yourself, John.
I said, good to see you. I do remember you, Anthony. I do. And good to see you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't know. I miss working with kids on a day-to-day basis. You know, I just think good teachers can definitely make a difference. And of course, I'm over here now at central office, and I get to interact a lot with teachers, but not so much with kids anymore.
Mhm.
That is definitely what keeps us going by
Yeah.
far. All right, Miss Adams, I'm going to turn it back over to you. So we can
Okay.
march forward.
To kind of piggyback a little bit on what Anthony's saying, when you hire dispositions, and that doesn't necessarily mean that what their academic abilities are don't matter. They do, but I think dispositions lead that endeavor. And it simply means if you're hiring some people who are alternative certified, it just means somehow or another, you've got to find time to do a lot of training with your staff. I'm kind of disappointed from one of my predecessor, and I thought maybe they might be able to join us today, but our district, quite honestly, has taken away some time that we creatively created. When Lou Young was my superintendent, we decided I needed time to meet with my entire staff when they were paid to be there, because we ran night school. So 4 days a week, as soon as school was out, we had 15 minutes to get ready for another school day to start. And so I couldn't do it after school. After school on Fridays is not ideal. So we decided to do a longer Monday through Thursday, which freed up half day on Fridays so teams could all meet. And then once a month, we actually had a no student Friday, which meant I had the entire morning for whole faculty meeting when lots of things were discussed and the whole faculty's hearing the entire discussion. And then it also gave time to train with some specific groups if we needed to. And frankly, we almost always needed to. And it was interesting to me, when the training is pertinent to people's everyday life in school, they don't mind coming. They don't want to come to training that's not going to improve the rest of their time in school. But training's really important. But you can train people to do their jobs better. You can't train them to be decent, good human beings who want to work with difficult kids and who want to function as a part of a team. So I guess that's enough said. I did oftentimes when I called references, because sometimes people hate to give you, they hate to put anything in words. So I would often just say on a scale of 1 to 10. And I know you can do a lot of that stuff in writing, but there's something that comes across when you're talking to a supervisor on the phone that you might not pick up from a piece of paper when they rate somebody an 8. You know, and an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10 can mean different things for different people. So I always tried to have those conversations over the phone, and would say, you know, rate this person on a scale of 1 to 10. And if I got an answer that kind of caused me concern, they said, you know, a 6. I'm like, you know, can you tell me more about why you gave that person a 6? But I just feel like that pre-interview time, as I went on, I began to realize that I had to devote more time to it. And it saved me. I made better hires my last 7 or 8 years that I did the first 5 or 6. I'm a little ashamed to tell you it took me that long to catch on. All right, next screen. Once we got to the actual interview process, I would say I would prepare the team ahead of time, ask them to come in 30, 40 minutes ahead of time. I always had coffee and something to eat for people, not just for the sake of the interviewee, but for the sake of the people who were giving up their time in the summer to come. And I would ask a teacher to kind of open the interview. I'd do some initial comments, but then I would say, Mrs. Bruner is going to talk a little bit about what it's really like to teach here. What are the joys of teaching here, and what are the struggles? I wanted them to be realistic, but I didn't want them to necessarily be negative either and share just the negative. But I wanted the interviewees to hear that straight from a teacher's perspective. And then I would, on the next click, Robert, then I would always say to the interviewee, even before they came in, the first 15 to 20 minutes of your interview are going to be us talking, not you. And then I would always explain to the people that over time, I had grown convinced that it was best for me to lead by principles, not rules. And by that, I meant things such as in Jessamine County, you're expected to be in your school 30 minutes before, 30 minutes after school every day. And that's the rule. And the principle that's based on is that, you want to be equitable in what you expect of your employees. You want your employees to be available for conversations with you, with other teammates, with parents. So the rule is good, but the principle is that we want people to be available and professionals. Well, then sometimes you have situations where you have a guy, for instance, this is a case of one of mine. I had a teacher, Joey, who went through a divorce. His wife moves to Lexington with his 2 children. And on his weekends to have the children, he needed to leave my school about 20 minutes, with about 20 to 25 minutes left in the school day, so he could get to Lexington to pick them up, because the bus would not deliver them to his house for those weekends, and he had nobody there to meet them. Well, he was a great teacher. Off the charts, wonderful teacher of the year for Jessamine County for several years, at least twice, nominated many times. And so I would just simply say to the folks, this is the situation. And I would say to Joey, first of all, I would say to my teachers, don't sneak and leave. Tell me what's going on so I can help, because I don't want that whole sense of sneaking and teachers covering for other teachers. Let's just be open about it. Joey's a single dad. We want to help him take care of his family and take care of his job. So it was not uncommon. I would say to Joey, look, if by Wednesday of your week to have your kids, if you don't have someone who can cover your class during their planning that last part of the day, you need to let me know so I can come cover your class. And it mattered to me to keep Joey on staff. And my option was to not help Joey be a good dad and a good teacher, and then losing to Lexington, Fayette County, who pays more anyhow. I explained to folks that I led by principles, and the principles were that I wanted good teachers, but that I was going to try and help them take care of their family, their health, take care of their parents. And I encourage staff members to be the kind of people who helped each other do that, which is why hiring based on dispositions is so important, because you want to hire people. If you hire people who have mission drive, that mission drive usually extends to adults, not just kids.
And Denise, that leads right back into what Anthony said about the culture. We don't have a lot of variables that we have access to, especially financially. but we do have the ability to go into a classroom and take a classroom to allow a teacher to leave early and to really, I love what you said by principles, that human factor that sometimes we forget, that makes the difference between someone feeling like this is truly an extended family, what we're doing here, because the work is so hard and so intimate at times, or is it just a workplace to which I'm just another commodity?
Right.
And I think it's so important that we slow down enough and see what can we do to support our teachers as they're living life and as they're going through struggles, because we all have seasons. And just
Right.
because a really good teacher has a season, we don't want to lose them. So Denise, I
Exactly.
think that's spot on. I like that. a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. You have teachers that never get to see their kid perform in that play that happens at school during the day. And sometimes it's not feasible if they are driving in from Lincoln County, it's probably not feasible for them to drive to Lincoln County. But if it's another school here in Jessamine County, and they can get somebody to cover their class or ask me to step in time, leave me a lesson plan, please. It's worth it. And it becomes one of those things we eventually realized, and I didn't know this to start with, that we had the best teacher retention rate in our county and the best attendance rate in our county, despite the fact that it bothered some people when I would bend the rules for a Joey or bend the rules for a Jessie who wanted to see her son sing at the talent show. And I always said to that person that there's going to come a day when you're going to need that same flexibility, and you're going to appreciate it when you get it. But I said that to folks before I hired them, so they knew that's who I was and that's how I managed the school and managed the school culture. In addition, because of an alternative school, you're always looking for people who might lead some kind of special event or bring some special unique quality to your school. So I looked for similarity in dispositions, but when it came to interest, I looked for diversity. And I was looking for people who through college, put themselves through college landscaping. I developed a pretty strong landscaping program at our school by hiring an English teacher who had a landscaping background. He's quit teaching, go back into landscaping. But somebody who says, I'm a Dave Ramsey fan, or I grew up in Germany, or I speak Italian. Anything that brought a uniqueness to our school, I felt like was an opportunity for us to take that special quality and expand on it and make it and enrich things for students. We had all kinds of cool things just because I just found people to be amazingly talented and more interesting than most of them think they are. Next click. If a candidate met the disposition test, then they had to convince us that it mattered a lot for their students to learn. We work with kids that are behind in their learning. And I used to say to my teachers at the beginning of every year, these kids have parents that don't parent, and the last thing they need is a teacher that won't teach. It's our kind of kid have encountered a lot of fake adults, and they just don't need to encounter fake teachers. So they really do need to have teachers who first and foremost want to connect with them, but right behind that connection is I care so much about you that I cannot allow you to graduate high school reading on a fourth grade reading level. And we've got to address these. We've got to address these, the academic side. I felt like if our school became known as a school that didn't care about academics and whether or not our kids were genuinely learning and improving their academic skills, their ability to think critically, then it was going to be pretty hard to keep the confidence of central office. It was going to be hard to keep parents. Initially, our school was full of kids who parents seemingly, according to a lot of people, parents who didn't care. I really found that there's very few parents who don't care. But as time went on, we began to even get some kids who came from homes that of parents who just said, I'm seeking another opportunity for my kid, and I think Providence might meet their needs. It was a different sort of family. And I don't know how to say this gently, but probably a little more middle-class family, middle-class values. But I think the impetus for that was we began to have a reputation as really changing kids academically. So that mattered to us. The committee's decision, next click. When we're done interviewing, I would ask each committee member, and sometimes I'd dismiss them so people could go use the restroom. They could go to their room, they could sit in where we were interviewing, but I wanted them to rank order their choices and give a rationale before we discuss that. Oops, sorry, we've got 2 clicks there. If we couldn't arrive at a clear decision after doing that, sometimes we would decide to interview candidates again, asking questions that would help us differentiate. Sometimes, another click, Robert. Sometimes we decided to interview 1 or 2 more from the original pool of candidates. Sometimes I called references again with more specific questions. Just trying to make sure we put our time into picking the best person we can, because it certainly saves you time later on. It's more time consuming going through the process, but through the years, it's more time. It's a time saver. Some other random thoughts about hiring. These are just things I learned from making mistakes. Is, don't promise a job to anyone, not even your best teacher, until the interview's been held. You're interviewing for an assistant principal. You're interviewing for a new counselor. Hold the interviews without making any promises or any indication of a promise. We would often ask interviewees, I would, tell me about a time you disagreed with your principal and how did you address that concern with them? I really wanted people who were going to come directly to me with a concern, and feel like I wasn't going to hold that against them, and actually value open disagreement. After a few years, I began to realize the value of each decade of experience. John's 30 years gives him a unique perspective on education that somebody in that first decade of their career can't have. And vice versa, you begin to realize when you've done this for 30 years and you're talking to somebody who's brand new, they've got some different training than you've got, they've got technical experience you've got. Those 1 to 10 year people brings unique strengths. So I really found that if I could keep a balance, 1/3 of my staff or close to it in that first 10 years, 1/3 in the middle, and 1/3 in what I called the last 10 years, it brought a balance to my staff and some unique strengths from each group. Couple other random thoughts. Your best opportunity to address a problem is your first opportunity. I had to pull a teacher into my office the very first day of school. He came to me from another county with high recommendations from a special ed director, had retired from New York City school system. And when I went to his classroom that first day of school, I could tell that when the custodians had cleaned his room and piled stacks of books on student desk and computers, all of that was still sitting on student desks. They didn't even have a place to write. There was nothing on the board. There was nothing on the walls. And I can remember sitting there getting really sick to my stomach and thinking, oh, gee, And so I left a Post-it note, just said, stop by my office sometime today. And so he stopped by at lunch and I said, look, we need to talk. Is today after school better for you or another day this week? And he said, well, I can do it the day after school. So I just said to him that very first day of school, I was pretty disappointed when I walked in your classroom this morning and realized how unprepared you were for the first day of school. And I had that statement written down because I would get nervous if I didn't write it down. I would get nervous about how to open the conversation. So I would write it down. And I would say to them, look, this is really hard for me. It's bothered me all day, but it's important that I do this right. So if you don't care, I'm going to read what I've written to you. And he kind of said to me, I'm shocked that you've called me in the first day of school. And I'm kind of like, well, likewise, I'm shocked I have to. But but the very first opportunity, I knew if I didn't address it that first day, that my students were going to come back in the second day, and those computers and books were still going to be on their desk, and they weren't going to, it was clear to the kids, it was clear to me that this individual was not ready to teach. So the longer you delay, the harder it is, and the more damage that's done to your school and to your students.
And I just would like to add one more thing to that. I don't know if you guys remember, there was an author, Todd Whitaker, and he went on to say about difficult conversations we had to have with our staff. And sometimes it's come to fruition with us and how we handle things. If you catch a staff doing something that you know is definitely inappropriate, a lot of times I'll rush up to you and then want to talk to you right then about it, and you're not ready. And the worst thing you could do is have a conversation that's sensitive in nature and not be ready for it.
Right.
It's better to say, I will contact you and we will talk about this, because you need to make sure, like Denise said, you've got to make sure you understand what you're going to say, especially with everyone recording our conversations. It is critical that you don't get yourself in a position that, okay, I said too much, and then all of a sudden you got an appeal going on when you have to let a teacher go, and it gets real litigious really quickly in today's environment. So just make sure when you have to have these sensitive conversations, and by the way, you have to have them because other people see you not having them, which has a negative impact on the culture for your superstars. Make sure you're ready. Just make sure you take the time to, even if you need to reach out and sound off to someone, you know, how should I approach this? Use our network, use people that you have, that you trust, and just make sure you understand exactly how you need to step through these sensitive conversations.
Yeah. In that particular situation, I actually called our special ed director, who's our current superintendent, and just said, this is what happened. This is what he's coming to my office at 4 o'clock, any advice, and talked it through. And I read to him what I had written for my opener. And, you know, I said to teachers, I know this may feel pretty rote to you, but it's important to me that I say what I feel like needs to be said. So that's why I have written it down. It's also important, obviously on difficult things, you're going to only call in the individual. Sometimes it's important to take the time, if you've got 3 staff members, you know, a small number of your staff members who are doing something wrong, rather than addressing the whole faculty with that and wearing out your superstars who are doing things well. Sometimes you really do have to take your time to call in those people one at a time and talk about missing bus duty or missing lunch duty, rather than fussing at the entire staff about it. Next one. Leadership's the difference between telling people what they want to hear versus what they need to hear. And that's hard for a lot of us. It was really hard for me. It was hard for me to make the transition from the counselor to the principal, because I kind of wanted to be that person whose people left your office feeling better. And when you're the administrator, they don't always leave your office feeling better. But it's important for them to leave your office feeling like you were truthful, that you were straightforward, and though you may have been direct, that you were not malicious in anything you said, and that your intent was to do the best you could for your students. Next click. And I will say this, be careful to only disappoint your people at a rate they can absorb. I don't remember where I got that quote from, but I can remember times when you know, you'd hear something from central office and you knew it was going to impact your whole staff. You knew it wasn't going to go over well, and how you approach disappointing your staff matters. And sometimes you can't help but to disappoint it, and sometimes they just have to absorb and do the best they can. But you have to understand that staff culture really matters, it matters in any school. And I think it matters especially right now in all school climates. But I think in alternative schools, that's a very tenuous situation to keep your people encouraged that that their hard work really does pay off and lead to improvements in students' lives. I think that's it.
That is, we do appreciate that. And if anyone has anything else to add on everything that we've talked about, or anything that we've talked about before we see if George or Alyssa is ready for the JAG presentation, I would like to add another thing is when we have these sensitive conversations, sometimes, especially if it's the opposite sex, I've pulled in another person to be with me while I've had these meetings, because again, it's always erring on the side of making sure that you have a witness to what's going on, so you're
Yeah.
protected and the integrity of what you're trying to accomplish is maintained. And sometimes we rush and we feel like we can trust people, but unfortunately I've been around long enough where sometimes people mislead you as far as what their intent is, and then before you know it, you've got another issue that you've got to contend with because you didn't have a witness in a meeting that was very sensitive.
Yeah.
So just don't be afraid to take someone in there. It's not a reflection on you. It's just professional, and making sure that everyone understands exactly what the meeting's about and what type of goals that we have set. And most times I have them sign a conference summary afterwards to make sure they understood why they were called into a meeting, what the meeting was about, and the expectations moving forward, and they have it signed.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
in this part of Frisk, I don't know if we can, that's another topic for another time, but it's basically just making sure whatever we do is based on facts and not emotion. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there. Does anyone have anything else to add?
I just want to say her last statement about being able to have those hard conversations. I think that's the key to being a good leader, and the fine line there, but that is very, very important. And be a helping agent in the same sense. And then if if that continues not to work, then you have to, it's like Anthony says, you have to cut ties and move to somebody else,
Denise, Robert, that good information, Denise. Appreciate you sharing all that. I wrote a few things down that kind of struck me. Dispositional hiring is, man, it's where we are now. The days of what's your strengths and what's your weakness questions are not really telling you a whole lot, because they prepare for those questions. You give them a scenario and ask what they would do. That puts them a little bit on the spot, but it causes them to be real honest with you and just kind of give you a good answer. And so I've got a link, actually. It's about 10 years old, from Boone County Schools. I'm doing some dispositional hiring things right now with a group that I'm working with through GREC. I'm also doing some employee discipline. Like, all of this stuff is exactly like I'm actually working on some of this stuff today for another group. So I'm probably going to share some links with you all. And one, in fact, is a record of conversation. Robert was just talking about making having a summary of what you talk about. I found that in most cases, one conversation, an informal conversation in their room, took care of 90% of my issues. The other 8% or 9%, I had a single piece of paper that basically just said, we had this conversation, I'm going to sign it and you sign it, and that's it. And it's not anything really, I don't know what the word is, real heavy handed, I guess. I'll send you a copy of that as well, an email after this meeting's over. But that worked for almost all the other issues. I never had to go to a corrective action plan because I treat them with respect, talk to them about the issue, and usually they're self-corrected. But if I need a little bit more teeth, then I do this paper, and that pretty much took care of them. In my position, I told this group I'm working with last time we met, hiring for me was a year-round job. There were two things I spent the most time on as elementary principal. Second one was deciding which classroom kids would be assigned to, which teacher they get. That was number two. Number one was hiring. I spent more time on hiring than I did anything else. And I was in elementary school, 700 kids. So, we had 30 to 35 teachers and, of course, all the staff. So it was a lot, but it is a year-round job. And I was extremely thorough. You go through social media, that'll disqualify a lot of them right there. So that's one thing that I did a lot of. And, Robert talks, or I guess it was mentioned that how you treat people is so critical. Word's going to get out, and they're going to know that if John's hard to work for, or Lindsay's hard to work for, their employees are that's your best advertisement. Your employees are going to tell other people, it's a great place to work because my principal treats me well. And that's worth what you were talking about, going to another district and earning a little bit more money. It's worth the drive to come somewhere where you're treated with respect. So anyway, I'll shut up, but I'll share a few things with you guys. I'll respond to Robert's email and drop some links in there. Hopefully you might find some of that helpful.
That sounds great. And piggybacking on that, Dan, when I did the Frisk in the conference summary, that was for that little few, usually verbal redirects, private conversations handled most things. And they were like, oh my, sometimes they didn't even realize what they were doing. And it goes towards building a professional community and trusting each other instead of automatically going, because once I've had very few, just like Dan, corrective action plans, when you're in a small school, it gets toxic quick. It can get really toxic because then we have to live in this environment that we created. Because if they're not responding to your verbal redirects, and if they're not responding to a conference summary, when you put them on a correction plan, then you pretty much have got to ride them out the whole year. And you're going to be spending a lot of time in that classroom from my experience. So.
Yeah, that's another great point too, is that most people don't realize what they're doing. Sometimes people get negative. We do it. I mean, we get negative sometimes. Sometimes we need somebody just to grab us and say, hey, dude, it's not that bad. You're being negative, and it's rubbing off on people. You're like, okay, yeah, I didn't even realize it. And if you go and have that conversation, say, look, I just want to make you aware this is how you're being perceived. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. I'm so sorry. And you're right, Doc, that'll take care of a whole lot of it.
Yes, sir. All right.
Sometimes one final question, sometimes just to have somebody, and where you choose to have the conversation matters too. Those initial conversations, I can step into someone's classroom on their planning period and have them. You step it up a little bit when you ask them to come to your office. And you can kind of ratchet things up just by, some of those more subtle things. But sometimes to step into someone's room and just say, are you okay? Are you doing okay? I'm concerned about you. You don't seem yourself lately. And it's amazing when you ask somebody, are they okay? And they begin telling you everything that's going on in their world. And then your next question could be, how can I support you more? Because, I'm presumably talking about a good teacher. You're a good teacher, certainly want to help you get through this difficult year you're having, and that last decade of people, you can almost assure some of them are dealing with health issues themselves or health issues in their family. In that first decade, you've got people getting engaged, getting married. That second decade, it's children they're worried about. But just to simply ask somebody, are you okay? You don't seem like yourself lately. If there's anything I can do, I want to do it. And it's amazing how just that simple question can open up avenues for people to share what's really going on.
Can't say it any better than that. So true. Thank you. Right now is, do we have anyone from JAG? Is George or Alyssa able to be on here right now? They were going to try to call in, and I know they're having internet difficulties. Right now, if Denise, if you want to share a little bit more, open it up to some topics, I'm going to try to reach out to them via phone and see how they're doing, and then I'll be right back.
Is there anybody who can share about a situation where you did have to put a teacher or any employee on corrective action and steps you took to make that process end well? And when I say end well, not necessarily meaning that the teacher corrected their actions, but I think probably when I say end well, meaning end well for the school as a whole and for kids in particular.
I will speak to that. I had to, my first year was kind of a doozy. I had to get rid of a secretary because she showed up to work under the influence. I had a student tell us that she had done some sexual things with a former teacher, so the police got involved. And then this teacher, she showed up to work and was heavily medicating herself, all prescription. So we had to have a sit down and discuss all of that. In the years since, she's been amazing. She's so just kind of, I think, confirming that discussion with her to say, hey, we notice you, but we care about you. So maybe talk to your doctor, and maybe you're being overprescribed, but not in so many words. And then in the years since, it's been, we've had that ability to discuss with each other. If she's feeling under the weather, like, I'm not over medicating myself, but this is what's happening. And she's become one of my best employees. So that's kind of that's what you were asking about. That's kind of my experience.
Mhm. So in your situation, just directly confronting it. Is this the same? Were there two different people? It sounds like there were two.
This was
people.
three different
Okay.
incidents. My first year as a principal, it was
okay.
it was a doozy, and then the end of the year with the pandemic. So it was a really great year. So she was, this was just that was the third incident. And by then I'd become kind of old hat at having these uncomfortable conversations. Now I'm back to, I have to have one tomorrow, and I'm not looking forward to it. But yeah, it ended up being well. It was a direct, I had to call in HR, and then kind of, since I was brand new, I didn't know how to go into this, but it ended up being, I learned a lot because she was an NEA member. And so I had, she had a rep. And so I learned a lot through the process, but it has strengthened the relationship that I have with that teacher since then.
Well, that's a good outcome.
Yeah,
it is. One other thing I would recommend, anytime I felt like I had to confront a teacher about a really sensitive topic, like anything you're talking about, frankly, even confronting that teacher on the first day of school, I always called HR. I just felt like they needed the heads up of what was going on. And hopefully that I just needed to speak with HR, but I just to say to somebody, is there anything any advice you want to give me? I'm had this conversation at 4:00 today. Any advice you can give me? I always tried to have difficult conversations too at the end of the day rather than beginning of the day. For obvious reasons. You have that difficult conversation, and then you send somebody to class, and it's clear to everybody they're upset. When you're done, they need to be able to get in their car and drive home.
I agree. I just was able to talk to George and Lissa, and they may not have video, but they're going to be logging on within the next 5 minutes to present the JAG program and answer any questions about the resources associated with JAG. So we're going to keep the open forum going right now until they log on. So if we could just keep it going and keep sharing out ideas and resources, then that'd be great. Does anyone else have a tough story to walk us through and how they handled it or how they approached it? Now, John, I know you're getting ready to retire, but I know you got something to share with us now.
No, we had a couple issues at the development center with a couple substitutes. Of course, substitutes are hard to get anymore. We've had to really up our district pay scale just to have enough people to almost cover, but just with a few comments and stuff like that weren't appropriate. We had to have some tough conversations, but been fortunate out there to really hire good people that have taken a lot of pride in the facility and their goals. And we've had a couple kinks in the road, but nothing couple hard conversations that, we got it straightened out that didn't get to the corrective action plan. But So I've been fortunate in that sense for sure.
Well, that's great. Speaking of subs, we've actually, sometimes you just don't know what you're going to get. We've had some subs come in and their attire was completely inappropriate. And we actually had to send them home just because it was such a distraction for the students. And so those are things that as a leadership, you can't be afraid to do. You've got to make sure you're careful in how you approach it. But if those tough conversations and those judgment calls that you need to take, it's just as important. The effects are just as positive if you take them and just as negative if you don't. With those that are still working, seeing that other students or other staff are able to get away with things and not be held as accountable, it starts to erode the overall culture of the school. So it is critical as leaders in these settings that we make those calls and have the tough conversations when we need to.
One other comment I might make, Robert, if we've got time. One of my biggest regrets in hiring was I ended up hiring a counselor. Actually, to a degree, I inherited her because when the alternative schools in Jessamine County, 4 of them combined into the Providence School, she kind of came with one of the other programs. So in a sense, I sat on our interview committee, but I had no idea that a year later, Providence School was going to be a reality. And I just assumed she would continue working at the at the place she worked for the first year. But she was one of my best friends, my running partner for many years, camped and hiked with her all over United States and Canada. But it didn't end well, and it didn't end well for friendship. To be honest with you, she began acting pretty bizarre at some point, going through a difficult divorce. And when I confronted her to see if she felt like she needed time off, she threw me out of her office. I remember standing outside of her office and thinking, somehow this feels odd that I'm the principal and she's thrown me out of her office. Wow. But anyhow, the long story is that it kind of destroyed that relationship that our family had with her family. She was going through a difficult divorce. Her son was autistic and had just been diagnosed with schizophrenia. So I felt like she was really needing time off. And she did several things that were completely out of character, including I got a phone call one day and said, run to Barb's office. And I ran back there. It was clear across the building. When I walked in, she was saying to a parent, Mr. Banta, a fight? Is that what you want to fight? Well, come on up. I'll be waiting in the lobby and I'll whip your, you know what? And I'm like, no. So anyhow, I knew something was going on. I had no idea what we were dealing with was the onset of early Alzheimer's disease. That would have been much easier for me emotionally and for Barb and for our families had she and I not had that personal connection. She died last week after she was diagnosed at 48, died at 64 last week. And fortunately, we had a chance to kind of do some damage repair, and I had some chance to do some damage repair with the family. But nevertheless, I regretted what it did to our relationship for me to be the person who had to confront that situation. So I would really advise you I never saw that coming, you know, who would see somebody being diagnosed at Alzheimer's at 48, but that's not the only crazy situation that can happen. So I would really caution against hiring close friends, because if you value that friendship, it's going to change once you begin supervising the person.
Well
Ms.
said.
Adams, I thought for sure you were going to say your most regrettable hire was that
Was you?
principal you brought to the Providence School 2005. I was just waiting for the name drop.
No.
I appreciate it.
No.
And,
You became
also,
a friend. You became a friend after I hired you.
And also don't loan your best friends any money. That's another one to go by, Bart. I would loan you some, Bart, if you really needed it.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Well, do we have anyone from JAG on right now?
We are Alyssa Kobe and George Stafford are both here.
Very good. George Stafford is the executive director for JAG. Alyssa Colby is the student leader and media manager for JAG, and is she co-director? Is that right?
Say that again.
She works closely. I'd almost say she's co-director with everything that she works with us.
I'll let the actual co-director know about that one.
All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to George and Alyssa, and I appreciate them taking time to present their program. Hopefully everyone has their materials that they've had a chance to review that was sent out yesterday. But at this time, I'm going to turn it over to George and Alyssa.
Thank you, Dr. King. And thank you everyone that's on the call. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but we definitely want to let you know about the programs that we offer, and just see if it's a fit for your school, and see if you have interest. So we're going to go through 3 different segments of this. We'll take questions at the end of each, and then we'll take questions at the end as well. But just want to make sure everybody knows what our program is, what it does, and who it serves. And I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa at this point and to get us started.
Awesome. Yeah. So the first kind of section that we're going to talk about is just the basics of the program. So at the heart of it, JAG is a career ready program. We are designed to serve your most in need students and prepping them for 2 things. The first one, the big one, is getting them to graduation. And then the second is preparing them for success for life after graduation, whether that is, post-secondary, or maybe they're joining the military, or even just jumping right into the world of workforce. So those are the really key priorities that we're looking at: graduation and life after. So the students that we are looking to have in this program, like I said, are your most in need students. But these are the ones that have multiple barriers keeping them from succeeding. And so we have a selection criteria. I think that was sent out to you yesterday. So we look at the selection criteria and we ask that students have at least 6 to 9 of these barriers to qualify for the program. And when you look at the selection criteria, honestly, every high school student could qualify for the program. But we are looking at these things to make sure that we have the right students in the program receiving the help to help them succeed. So these barriers are anything from low income home, single parent home, trauma that they have in their life that's holding them back, all the way to simply they lack the marketable skills to be successful in the world of workforce, which is every high school student. So we're looking to have 45 to 65 of these students in the program. And as for the class of JAG, it is set up as an elective that a student can take on their course load. We are a recognized CTE elective, so it counts as 1 credit towards graduation. And so in this class, we are teaching these students our 37 core competencies throughout the year. You should have also received a document that lists out these competencies, but we have 37 core competencies, 81 total, but throughout the year, we really focus on those 37. And so those 37 core competencies range anything from learning how to introduce yourself, to conflict resolution, how to work in a team, all the way to building that resume and how to conduct yourself in an interview. And so we focus on all of those things, and then we also look at the 3 components of the JAG model. So the curriculum and the program are based on these 3 components. And so the three components are project-based learning, which is focusing on an interactive, student-led curriculum, making sure that's really interactive for them. The second one is trauma-informed care. We are meeting the students where they're at and helping them overcome their struggles. And then the last one is employer engagement. We're focusing on bringing in the community and local employers to the class to give students as many opportunities as we can. So that is a very quick overview of the basics. Do we have any questions that we can ask at this point?
All right, if there are no questions, we'll move on to the next portion, which is employer engagement and employer engagement.
Sorry, George, I apologize. I had a quick question. I just couldn't get my mic unmuted. Anthony James, Marion County Schools. I actually said on the presentation with you all earlier this week, and I appreciate the information you shared. I will say this real quickly. Next Wednesday, I'm going up to Fayette County to meet with Miss Essenbach to do a tour of their facility and sit down with her and kind of talk all things JAG as we go down this road in Marion County and hopefully be able to partner with you all. So we're really excited about that myself. My question was, if we do not have the 45 students initially, like we start the school year with 35 kiddos, but we add up to the 45 plus later on, is that okay? Or do we have to have the 45 at the onset?
That's a super question, and I would say that it's really needed to have those 45, but each school, we'll be glad to talk to you about that. But we really like for that the low number to stay pretty, pretty intact, and the reason for that is, so many kids will I guess transfer in and out of a district, or maybe leave the program, or have to be put in a different class because they're behind, maybe in credit recovery or wherever that is. But we do like to keep that 45 as solid as we can. But let's definitely discuss that and see what we can work out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else with questions on? Okay. Again, we'll start employer engagement, but as Alyssa mentioned, we have employer engagement, project-based learning, and trauma-informed care are the three pillars that JAG stands on and stands behind, and the employer engagement is one of our big pieces of our program. And just to back up for a second, when we take a program into a school, we actually are taking it into that community, and we want it to be seen that way. We want the local businesses who have those in-need positions to be able to feel like that our JAG students are a great resource, to be able to come to the classroom and work with them, maybe even give them assignments and use that as a project-based learning or a PBL assignment, to where they're getting told these are some of the problems we're having in our workforce, or maybe in our just in our office, or maybe it's some other problem in the community, and they get to solve these problems. And these are the students who never get the opportunity to or never asked really probably about anything, and they probably in a lot of cases haven't cared to be asked about it. But now they're getting to solve some of the real world problems, and they can see how it fits into the community. And then the community benefits from this, because now you have students who are engaged, we hope, in the community, who are seeing it from a different angle that they've ever seen it before. So that's a big piece. So when we say employer engagement, it's also community engagement, and we want the community to be well aware of what's going on and get excited about what's going on at your schools. So employer engagement, we hope to have your students working in your local companies. We want to see that throughout the year. We'll build on that from trauma-informed care. We want the specialist who's hired in the various schools to be able to talk with, either one-on-one or in in small groups about things that are going on, maybe in the workforce, at home, at school, whatever barriers, as Alyssa mentioned, that are holding them back. How do we move them from point A to point B and get them out into a successful future? And then the project-based learning, we want this real world learning to take place in, if not all, most of all the JAG work that is done in the classroom. So we want your students, JAG students, to be successful, not only in your school building, but in your community, and let the community really see that and highlight what these kids are doing. Does anybody have questions in regards to that at this point? Okay. Alyssa, if you want to talk to them about the Career Association.
Yeah, so like I had mentioned earlier, how JAG is a class that they're taking. It is also a club that they can be a part of. So that's where our JAG Career Association comes in. Students have the opportunity to be a part of something bigger, be a part of something where their voice is heard, and they have some leadership opportunities to take part in there. So in the Career Association, they are really practicing and refining their employability and leadership skills. We like to have students run for office in their career association. So we have the opportunity for students to be the president, vice president, secretary, and so on. So they have the opportunity to claim their part in this program. You'll see students stepping up, students maybe that probably they thought they wouldn't be in a leadership position, but now they have this opportunity to shine and to take that up. So also in the Career Association, honestly, my favorite part is they have the chance to give back. A lot of students are taught how to take, and so this is an opportunity for them to give back to their school, give back to their community, in the form of community service projects. And so they get to put their voice in and choose what community service project that they would like to do. So we've seen lots of things from cleaning up a local park all the way to, food drives and prom dress drives, and lots of really cool things where students are serving their school and their community. So that's the Career Association. Another really big part of our program, and really important, is a 12-month follow-up. So upon graduation, we stick with our students for 12 months after graduation. So that full year after they graduate, the specialist, which is the teacher of the program, sticks with these students and checks in on them at least once a month for that full year, to make sure that they have the support that they need to be successful after graduation. So we keep that data in our database, and we're able to share that with the school systems and with funders as well. But we're able to show that progress and support these students. And so really, what you see, just kind of like a wrap up of the Career Association for sure, is there's like a sense of belonging that students get with this program. And I guess I'll let George kind of talk a little bit more about sense of belonging as well.
Sure. Thanks, Alyssa. One of the things that JAG's a little different in regards to our approach to what we do in the classrooms. And to kind of give you an example of that, when I was teaching the JAG curriculum, we would have a tournament, and it was an Uno tournament. And a lot of people, when I say that, kind of scratch their head and say, "Oh boy, this is different." But it's the Uno tournament where we're telling the students they can play with whoever they want. Of course, they go with the people they know and they feel comfortable with and their friends, and the ones who really don't like being at school and probably would not even want to play Uno, they do play and they do participate. We play for a candy bar, and all of a sudden that gets everybody a little excited. But what we end up doing is playing a tournament, and that really all we're doing is moving the kids around. They're playing for a candy bar and having fun playing Uno. But more importantly, what they're doing is they're getting to know each other. They're getting the opportunity to find out they're more alike with the students they probably didn't think it was cool to hang out with or maybe even speak to. So now they are interacting and working with and building a relationship and a network that they haven't had before, and probably a network they need in their life. So at the end of the day, the candy bar, the students see the candy bar who won, but what you'll see is that as the school year goes on, as these students hang out together, they get along better. They're on a team together, and it's because of the way the JAG program builds them up and brings them together so that they become more team oriented and see that there is some hope for them, and that they can see that they are supported and they can do the things that maybe they've been told in the past that they couldn't. So we'll wrap it up with that. But that in itself, what you've heard probably for the last 10 or 15 minutes is our program. And there's a lot of moving parts to it. But our success rate and what we do with our students in the classroom is pretty much unmatched in regards to the programs that we offer. So we'll be glad to answer any questions. Then I'll talk a little bit about funding and how that's set up, and answer questions after that as well. Okay, we'll move right into funding then. In regards to our organization, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our mission is obviously to serve the students who need the extra support to be successful, to graduate, and then have positive outcomes of whether it's college, whether it's workforce, whether it's trade school, or whether it's military, or any combination of those. That's our goal. That's our mission. We are funded several ways. We are funded by OVR, Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. We are a fee-for-service organization, so we are working with them for funds. We also have Medicaid as a provider, and we also write grants. We're working with corporate partners and community partners to help fund programs throughout Kentucky. What we do with those funds upon receipt is we take those and we give those out in grants to school systems. And we pay up to, or we can pay up to $40,000 for a certified teacher for the JAG specialist position. If they are not a certified teacher, we can pay up to $35,000 as an adjunct certified teacher. And that adjunct certification can be received by filling out the application on the EPSB website, putting that with their college transcripts. They must have a 2.75 GPA or higher and a graduate of an accredited college or university. And either way is completely fine. And actually, some of our better instructors have been the adjunct instructors. However, I think a lot of people do prefer certified. So it's really at the end of the day, what works is, and I'm preaching to the choir here, I believe, is whoever works best with your students. That's the most important thing, because if you get the right person in there, your program will succeed, and your students you'll see the results you want to see. And if you don't get the right person in there, it can be it's going to be pretty much the opposite. So that is at least from a financial standpoint, how this would work. So if you might be sitting there saying, well, how do I get there? Well, we would say, please contact us. We'll talk to you. We'll kind of walk you through the process and how it works. But we do have, that is how our JAG programs are established, is through the grant that we provide. The school gets to hire the candidate they want. All we ask is before the final offer is made to the specialist, that you allow Jason Miner, who is our Director of Education, speak to the candidate and let them ask any questions so that they are well informed and know exactly what is expected out of the JAG position. Because there are a lot of things, data being one of those, that the data that we use is goes into our database JAGForce. And through JAGForce, that's where we pull our reports, but we also submit that to OVR. So that's how a good portion of that money that goes toward the salary of the specialist, where that comes from. So I just wanted to, at least there will be certain highlights that Jason will be able to go over with the specialist that you would decide to hire.
Well, and George and Alyssa, I do thank you so much for presenting, and I just want to take a moment. I just went through this process to have the board sign the memorandum of understanding and the commitment, and it is just amazing how easy it is once you reach out to George. He and his team, they walk you through everything, they give you everything, and when I presented their package that they gave me to the board's only thing was, why are we only finding about this now? So they were very much, especially with all the career and college and career focus that we're all held accountable for now, is trying to find opportunities. And here we have something that basically all we have to do is pay for benefits for a person to actually develop these soft skills that our students need, and then not only help them develop them, but help them find a place for employment, and then to follow up to make sure they're still successful, and to make sure they learn and continue to advocate for themselves and have professional and success at their post-high school ventures. It just, to me, it was just, oh my goodness, this is just such a need, especially at the alternative schools. But they will hold your hand through this, and they have made it very, very easy for my board and for us to get the position approved, added to our position control, and we're in the process of interviewing and trying to find candidates now. So very much appreciative for all their support, and this is just one of those things that Kentucky has access to that is just, to me, is spot on for what we need and where we're headed right now.
Dr. King, I just want to thank you for allowing us to speak today and for having us on, and you're a great leader, not only for your school, but also within the GREC. So we look forward to working with you.
Are there any other questions right now for either George or Alyssa before we let them go? Well, everyone has got the documentation that I sent them, and again, they're only a phone call away. I encourage you to take advantage of it, especially as we're struggling. This ESSER money is going to go away pretty soon, within the next couple of years, and we're going to need to continue to find resources to help our students. So this is definitely a great resource to think about as we're heading into the summer. So thank you, George and Alyssa, and look forward to working with you, and I appreciate your professionalism.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
All right. So does anyone have anything else to add on the recorded line? Because I'm getting ready to pop off the recorded line so we can have some honest dialogue.